As you may have heard, I was once a professional cartoonist, and cartoons should give you a clue in a few seconds about a topic. But let's go to the bottom of this at the end of my unusual presentation, and I'll add the caption to the cartoon in just 20 minutes. So please bear with me. I'm going to tell the story of the impact of groundwater depletion in Iran and talk about two major cities. Yes, we have lots of hotspots, but let's just focus on two of them for the time being. First of all, what do we know about Iran and its aquifers? Let me channel through my dad.
Iran is facing a serious water crisis, and after that we would have food crisis. The reason for this dire situation is the shortage of water all around. Iran is in a very dry zone of the earth, and we receive about 1/3 of the average world precipitation. Therefore, we have to be concerned with the amount and timing of water that we receive. As about 60% of our water needs is supplied through underground, we have to manage our aquifers very carefully.
Old Persia was once the land of hydrogeologists who could drain a limited amount of groundwater without depleting the aquifers. Many consider the Persian civilization the Kariz civilization. Qanat or Kariz is a system of transferring water from an aquifer to the surface through a gently sloped tunnel.
Qanats are hand-dug tunnels that begin in the foothills of the mountains and wind gradually downhill to bring water to the homes kilometers away. A horizontal tunnel with a gentle slope that partly cuts through the aquifer. The slope was quite sensitive, as if it was too steep it would wash away the tunnel, and if it was not steep enough the water wouldn't flow. So it was quite an art to make these qanats.
Qanat is known to be the most sustainable means of transporting water in arid zones, as it limits evaporation. Old Persian water managers understood this. So what happened to the land of sustainability? What went wrong that forced many villagers to leave their homes and lands in the new Iran? This. And most certainly this one. More than 90% of Iran's renewable water resources are consumed by the agricultural sector. Most of the water needed for farming comes from aquifers. Also, some power plants have drained groundwater resources like this one near Hamadan, which was once a water-rich area. Now let's see what farming and power plants could do all together to a plain like this in Kabdarahang near Hamadan.
دورور سال 80 بود. قرار بود ما بیایم اینجا زمینه رو شخم بزنیم. اومدیم صبح سر زمین تراکتورها رو بندازیم، دیدیم بله زمینه نزدیک 30-40 متر دهنیش بود. رو به پایین نزدیک 70-80 متر عمقش بود.
After World War II and the commencement of Truman's Point 4 plan, many Iranians were introduced to deep well drilling machines and powerful diesel and electric water pumps. In 1963, the late Shah's land reforms gave many peasants a chance to own their own lands. And through the loans provided by the banks, these new landowners were able to dig wells and purchase water pumps. This enabled the farmers to extract groundwater individually, and each farmer extracted as much as he wished. Lack of supervision and failure to enforce laws and regulations gradually depleted the aquifers in many farming districts.
In the past 60 or 70 years, we have overexploited our aquifers to the tune of, on average, 7 to 8 cubic kilometers a year. Therefore, we have to replenish this water. If we continue using this much groundwater, we are going to end with dry aquifers and mass deaths of our people.
While the Shah liked building mega dams after falling in love with the Hoover Dam in 1949, some officials neglected the fate of groundwater resources. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, farmers and water managers dug almost 80,000 wells all around the country. Gradually, Obtaining digging permits was harder for farmers, but it got much easier after Ayatollah Khomeini and his pupils came to power. They encouraged farmers to produce grains without regard for water consumed in the process. Many farmers dug wells without any permits and exploited the aquifers beyond the system's balanced inflow and outflow of water. This was a bad sign. The Iranian government also followed the path of building dams. This time, it was on steroids, and groundwater depletion had become a new normal. The new leaders were obsessed with mega dams. For them, it was a sign of power and prosperity. In the spring of 2001, I wrote 2 op-eds criticizing the Khatami administration for its water policies and building too many dams without understanding the consequences. The president summoned me to his office, and I met him 3 days after his re-election to explain my points. I took my father with me. We told him that his administration's concerted efforts towards dam building and interbasin water transfer blatantly disrespected Iran's aquifers and ignored the warning signs that would have a very negative impact on the country in the next decade. His government took our points seriously by ignoring the warnings and censoring me. In the next decade, thousands of villages that once relied on qanats had lost the battle to wells and water pumps. With no water and plains becoming victims of subsidence, millions of farmers left their homes and lands to settle in shantytowns.
We have water shortage in many places, in hundreds of villages which are short of water. In the old days, they used to be supplied by qanats or qaris, but most of them have been dried due to the over-exploitation by powerful pumps.
Isfahan is now one of the major hotspots of land subsidence in Iran. The aquifer beneath the Isfahan-Bukhar plain is half empty now and is on the path of demise based on assessments. The dry bed of Zayan Darud, the major river that passes through Isfahan, became a political hotspot in November 2021. Isfahan, once the capital of Persia, is now a sinking city. The jewel of central Iran has experienced many droughts through history. Still, its water managers before the last century used its resources wisely and sustainably through the ages to save it for the very generations that are witnessing its destruction. After World War II, the government's water managers transferred water from one of Karun River Basin's tributaries, the Kuhrang River, to Zayan Darud. Later in the 60s, the government built a major dam to store water and regulate the river. This excessive amount of water was seen as a sign of wealth. The area under agriculture in the Zayan Darud Basin expanded, and many farmers began to cultivate rice and wheat. The government inaugurated the country's first steel plant in the arid central Iranian plateau, only relying on the flow of Zayan Darud that was receiving constant doping shots from Karun. After the 1979 revolution, a second steel plant that was first supposed to be built near the Persian Gulf was established near Isfahan, stealing more water from the basin to produce more steel. From 1998, a major and long-lasting drought started, and because of overconsumption and decreasing rain and snow, rivers such as Zayan Darud shrunk. Zayan Darud, which originates from Zard Kuh in the Zagros mountain range, is the most critical and strategic river in the central Iranian plateau. People settled near this river, and the city was born thousands of years ago during the Bronze Age. In the past, the annual flow of Zayan Darud was around 1.4 billion cubic meters, and out of that 1.4 billion, 650 million cubic meters was from tributaries and groundwater, and the rest was and has been transferred from the Karun Basin. The government is planning to transfer more water from the Karun Basin, and that is going to cause major problems with people in other provinces. Consumption of drinking water and sanitation has increased from 60 million cubic meters to over 400. And part of the water is being transferred to cities like Yazd and Kashan. Industries draw about 70 million cubic meters of water from the river and use the rest from wastewater treatment. The defined consumption for the Zayanderud River is about 1.5 billion cubic meters, while the river has an average of 1.1 billion cubic meters in the last few years. And last year, it became much less. So the rest comes from aquifers. After the drought struck in the late 90s, farmers who didn't want to change their routine started digging more wells and extracting more water from under the ground. The balance between the aquifer and the river was gone, and later signs of land subsidence appeared. A network of canals called Madi channeled water from the river to farms and orchards in the past. After the drought and transfer and consumption forced Zayanderud into its disappearance, the city dug a few dozen emergency wells. Madis were essential in recharging the aquifer, and now they're dried up. Over 5,400 wells in the Isfahan-Burkhar plain have become the only options for farmers. Half of the 1.7 billion cubic meter aquifer is now gone. Under today's regime of overdrafting, the aquifer will most likely die in the next 9 to 15 years. And through time, this has caused subsidence in the area, from a few millimeters on the edge of the Isfahan-Burkhar plain and aquifer to almost 18 centimeters per year in the middle of the plain, where people are feeling the heat, with a gradual destruction of their homes. Many have had to evacuate and leave. Recently, an official from the Ministry of Roads and Urban Development told me that considering the presence of active faults in the area, Isfahan is now turning into a high-risk city after thousands of homes have been affected by land subsidence. Reza Islami, the head of Iran's Geological Survey in the Isfahan province, says that the continuation of this situation and the exploitation of the aquifer will damage more than 6,000 historical structures, including old mosques, homes, and bridges in the city of Isfahan.
فرض بکنید الان زلزله بم افتاد دیگه. اگه شما اون موقع اینا میدیدی چی میگفتی؟
گفتم ممکن زلزله هم اینجا اومده باشه.
آره یعنی واقعا
اینجا رو باز من عنوان نمی‌کنم. دوربین رو بچرخونید اونور. اینجا قطعا میگفتم زلزله است.
قطعا میگفت. اگه عامل زلزله است.
حالا چه اتفاق افتاده اینجا؟ وقتی زلزله میاد من امید به بازسازی دارم. ولی وقتی که فرونشست اتفاق میفته مفهومش که اون دشت رو نگاه کنی خوش شده. یعنی من امیدی دیگه دوباره به ساختن این دیگه نخواهم داشت. تفاوت این دوتا یه تفاوت اساسیه.
درست.
یعنی ما ساختگاهی رو داریم که فقط بنا توش از بین رفته توی زلزله، ولی توی فرونشست ما ساختگاه رو از بین بردیم و بعد بنا رو. اینها دوتا اختلاف کلی با هم دیگه دارن. به نظر من زلزله که همه رو خاموش میکنه.
دقیقاً اتفاقی که ما میگیم تو 1409 که خوشبینانش 1416 باشه که آبخان آبش تموم میشه، اتفاق برای اصفهان خواهد افتاد.
ببین اکثر اونها صبح هم ما صحبت داشتیم دیگه، با شهردار محترم دامنه صحبت داشتیم، اینها اکثرا رسیده به کف، یعنی عنوان میکنن که اینجا کشت اضافه شده و در این حال دفعات کشت هم اضافه شده. یعنی درسته ما بهره‌وری رو انجام دادیم ولی میزان مصرف به حدیه که از میزان کاهش یا راندمانی که بر بهره‌وری ایجاد کردیم باز هم میزان مصرف بیشتره. پس بنابراین اکثر این چاه‌ها تقریبا تا کف پایین رفتن. یعنی ما آبخان رو تقریبا تخلیه کردیم. اطلاعات ژئوفیزیک هم به ما همین رو میگه. ما 4/5 آبخان رو تخلیه کرده بودیم تو اون زمان.
تو دامنه.
توی دامنه. پس بنابراین مهم این هستش که زمانی که ما ساختگاه رو از بین بردیم توجیهی برای ساخت هم دیگه وجود نخواهد داشت.
آیا یه سوال دیگه، این ترک‌ها که رو دیوارا هست اینا یهویی ایجاد شده یا قطعی بوده؟
تدریجه.
نه به تدریج بوده یهویی این ترکه به این گندگی؟ به تدریج
ترک ها باز و بازتر میرسه تا برسه به این موضوع.
به این ترک عرضش حد اکثر 50 سانتی اما بغل ها هم به این بغل یه ترک دیگه ایجاد شده، اینجا یه ترک دیگه و همینجوری میریم یهویی هم ترک های حلقوی که سمت حسین آباد ما میدیدیم اینجا داریم میبینیم و یهو این پدیده بسیار عالی یک فروچاله. دکتر 8 متر هست؟ آره دکتر به خدا اگه تناب بود من میرفتم، من اگه تناب داشتی میرفتم توش. آره اختلاف ارتفاع اینجا با اونجا چیز اولش 1.5 متره، یعنی این سطح با این سطح نیم متر اختلاف ارتفاع داره. حالا دوباره ادامه بدیم به حرکتمون. چه اتفاقی میفته؟ دوباره ترک‌های جدید شروع میشه. بله به موازات هم ببینید اینا قدیمیه و اینا جدیده، اینا جدیده، تمامی این ترک‌ها جدید.
درزش باز شده، انگوش قشنگ انگوش داخل میره.
وای جدی اینجا میخوابی شما؟
بله
باور کردم
اون پشتتون هم هست اونجا.
اصلا نخواب تو رو خدا، اینجا خیلی خطر داره.
اما اینجا نخواب.
A few years ago, two scientists published a paper indicating that between 2003 and 2017, there were 3 distinct subsidence features in Tehran with rates exceeding 25 centimeters per year in the western Tehran plain, approximately 5 centimeters in the immediate vicinity of Tehran International Airport, and 22 centimeters per year in the Varamin plain in the southeast of the capital. Tehran is a megacity with inadequate infrastructure built over an alluvial fan south of the Tochal mountain. For thousands of years, smaller towns and villages relied on a number of streams and qanats. In the 1800s, when the Qajar dynasty chose this part of the country as the capital, many moved to the new center of the Persian civilization. The radical development of the city started after the downfall of the Qajars, and the new king had high hopes to turn Tehran into a modern capital. Between the 1960s and the 1980s, many land developers and house builders began building settlements and suburbs regardless of soil resistance of alluvial fans and qanats, and after the Iran-Iraq War, many skyscrapers appeared all around the city. Seismologists are awaiting the return of a large earthquake, and according to estimates, the death toll from this earthquake may exceed 100,000 people. Although civil engineers were concerned about buildings' resistance to sudden shocks of earthquakes, paid no attention to land subsidence, which has turned into a silent earthquake. Cracks have appeared in many townhouses and condominiums and suburban homes, and sinkholes have emerged all around the capital. Parts of the city are sinking with a record of 25 centimeters per year, close to what we have seen in Corcoran, California. To add insult to injury, cracked buildings and weakened structures due to subsidence will have very little resistance to the large-scale earthquake that awaits them. And this will greatly increase Tehran's risk of destruction. Gary Seek, one of the members of the National Security Council under Ford, Carter, and Reagan, and an expert on Iranian politics, once told me that the effect of a major earthquake and drought is beyond a coup d'etat against the Islamic Republic. I think his statement is true, especially because the regime has not treated water, the planet's most precious gift, with care. There are many solutions. These are a couple of them. Improving agricultural policies, having an integrated water management system, environmental accountability should be there, applying environmental justice, and electing smarter leaders.
The most important activity is recharging aquifers, which have been depleted in the past 80 years. after the introduction of pumps in Iran. What we do, we divert flat water from mostly ephemeral riverbeds and spread it on coarse alluvium where infiltration is very high. By so doing, not only we charge groundwater, but we make soil thicker, and actually soil building is another part of our project. It is done by nature because the flood water is turbid and we have high rate of erosion on our watersheds. The flood brings a lot of silt and clay and organic material, and we spread it on the ground. By so doing, we actually increase the soil depth, and on sandy land, we stabilize the moving sides.
And here's the caption I was talking about 20 minutes ago.